Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm your host, Lisa Olagus. In this edition, we highlight the Solace House of the Ozarks. It's a unique home offering end-of-life care. Many Americans die in facilities like nursing homes or hospitals, sometimes receiving care that's not consistent with their wishes, particularly the wish to die at home surrounded by their loving family. We will discuss the similarities and differences of palliative care and hospice care, why a home like Solace House of the Ozarks is needed, how it operates with the help of volunteers, and we'll talk with its co-founder, Sandy Hughes, who shares the why behind Solace House in the following video.
For me personally, 5 years ago when I lost my husband to cancer, I was his hospice caregiver, and he wanted to pass at his home. From that experience, that purpose was placed in my heart to start an end-of-life care home in Joplin. Solace House is an end-of-life care home, and it's the first one in Joplin. It's a gift to the community, and we are so proud of it and the results that it's giving to the community. A place where they can come and die with dignity, surrounded by families who never have to leave the house, and they're welcome to stay as long as they want. The hospice agencies come here, and then we provide emotional support to the families. It's just a beautiful experience.
So Mom was in the hospital for the last month of her life. She had been living with me before she got extremely ill. Because of the situation at my house, we couldn't get Mom in and out of my house very well, and we knew Mom didn't have much time left. Compassus was able to introduce us to the Solace House here in Joplin. It was a blessing to us because we were able to come in and love on Mom and not be her per se caregiver, and that took a load off of our shoulders. The house here is beautiful. We were able to utilize everything possible.
So my grandfather, he suddenly had a stroke, and so the doctor said there really wasn't much time left for him, and we had to have a place for him to be. We had known Sandy for a long time, and so we were familiar with Solace House, and so the decision was made to bring him here. And just the ability to have a place where there's 24/7 care for him. We could come in at any time, day or night. They're going to take care not only of my grandfather's needs, they were going to take care of our needs. It was such a blessing that I made the decision to volunteer myself. There's other people that really need what my grandfather received. I want to be able to provide that for them.
Hospitals are realizing that families want to have choices about where their loved one dies, and it's usually not in a hospital surrounded by medical people. Solace House is totally free to the family. It's not a medical model, it's a social model. I think it's very innovative for its time, and I think it's greatly needed.
We lessen the intensity of the grief because we walk with them through this. And it's something that's so personal and so intimate, it can't be replicated or duplicated anywhere else. We open our hearts, they open their hearts, and together we walk this journey together. And once they leave this house, it's a remembrance that something happened very special at this house. And the volunteers that were here, which are the heartbeat of the house, made all the world of difference in the lives of these people. Pretty special.
Sandy Hughes joins us now. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for the invitation.
So Solace House is a personal mission for you, and my condolences on the loss of your husband. You know the struggles of families. You know what it's like. What do you think are the most important aspects that Solace House offers families?
In the video that we just viewed, I think that the expression that we lessen the intensity of grief. The individuals who come, their family members, they know what's ahead. And sometimes they need a little assistance, someone to listen to, someone to talk to. Part of my job when I'm volunteering at the house is to make them feel as comfortable as they possibly can be. It's a brand new house to them too. So we surround them with this unconditional love, offer them refreshments, hold-handing. We pray with them if they ask. Anything. We run errands. We just give them some relief. Another set of hands on deck. Tell me what I can do. And to have someone in the house, if they are staying the night, to be with their guest, the 2 beds in each room, gives them an opportunity just a little bit longer with their loved one. They don't have to check out, and there's no checking in. They are free to come and go as if it were your own home. And I love that part.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
It's something that's, you can't hardly put into words, Lisa. It's transformational. A gentleman came to the door one day, and he said, my wife's on her way, and I'm a little bit early. I don't think the ambulance is going to come for another couple of hours. Is it okay that I come early? And I said, well, of course you can. Let me show you to your bedroom. When he came in, his eyes, he was tired. He'd had very little sleep. He was weary. He was weary. He was in his 80s.
Wow.
This was his lifelong mate for 60 some odd years. So when he came to the house and I invited him in, I showed him back to the bedroom. I said, this will be your room. Well, what am I supposed to do now? And I said, I'm going to suggest you kick your shoes off.
Take a nap.
And take a power nap. And when you awaken, I'll have an apple pie and a cup of coffee ready for you. That's a deal. We smile at Solace House. We joke, we kid. It's not all serious and doom or gloom or sadness. Yes, and we hug, we embrace. Sometimes people just want to be alone. And that's when we allow that. They need space.
Right. And they have responsibilities at home that might make it difficult to have a loved one at home.
Absolutely. And I oftentimes think, when I ask the question, tell me about your loved one. How did you all meet? How many children do you have? About your lives. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of, maybe a little reticent to talk, but then once they start, then that's actually healing in the process because they're talking about their past.
And you said they have laughter, there's
yes.
some joyful moments too.
And like any family, we're family, and they know it. And when they come, we kid, we talk about their favorite foods, their favorite movies, books, anything.
Let's discuss some of the criteria that it takes for someone to be able to come to Solace House.
So the referral form.
And what does it mean to be a social model, I guess, because you're not a medical facility?
We're not a medical facility, but we have comfort beds, we have narcotics in the house, we have oxygen tanks. We don't have heavy lift. We normally can turn our guests, reposition them. We chart like a nurse would, even though some of our volunteers are trained and have been trained nurses and they're retired. Others, like myself, have maybe a limited background just by experience, but the ones who have had that medical background are so willing to share with the rest of us. The hospice nurses come in, they set the protocol, they write out the regimen for this guest. Then we take that example on paper, and then whoever comes in behind me on a 4-hour shift knows exactly, because I leave good notes, we all do, exactly what has happened. When was the last med given? I love the fact that our hospice and nurses, and they've often been called angels on earth, and they are. I cannot give them enough credit. If I have a question about a guest, if I notice a change, something that's not normal, Lisa, all I have to do is pick up the phone and call. I'll be there. I'll be there in 5 or 10 or whatever it is. I'm coming to the house. That connection, it's like it truly is a triage. You've got your hospice, you've got your family, you have us. And all of those 3 moving parts are there to work together for the good. And we do. And I've noticed that even after our guests have left the house, they've lost their life, those family members pick up the phone and call us again. They come by the house to stop by. They check in. They want to know how we're doing. It's a beautiful experience. It truly is.
So you're very passionate about this.
I am very passionate
about this. And it impacted your life.
Yeah, absolutely it did. And when my husband, he's the kind of, and I give it the glory all to him, yes, that the fact that it was placed in my heart. He gave me this purpose. My brother had a dear friend who was dying with cancer in Florida. This was back in 2007, 2008. And he came back from Florida after visiting her and the family, and he said, San, there is a hospice house, that's what it was called, a medical model in Florida that he visited. He said, I've never been in a house like this in all my life, how they care for the family and for their guests. He said, it's unbelievable.
So it was like an inspiration then.
It was an inspiration. That was planted in my heart then. When my brother walked with me through this journey till my husband lost his life, that kept coming up over and over again. And then probably within 10 days to 2 weeks after losing my husband, I immediately traveled to Clare House in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That, yes, there's other care facilities closer. Arkansas has some, Bentonville, Rogers area. But I went to Tulsa because I have children there. My son lives there. And so when I went to visit Clare House and captured the spirit of what they did, I knew that we could do it in Joplin.
Yeah.
We can do anything in Joplin once
So-
we set our mind to it.
It is unique. Is there a need for
There's
more?
oh
for
my
another
gosh, yes.
house?
Megan,
You're always busy?
Megan does her homework, and when she first started checking the stats, the demographics, population of Joplin, we could use a 5-bedroom house.
Wow.
Yeah. And so at this point, until legislature changes, Megan and I have been to Jefferson City on numerous times and spoken before the House of Representatives for senior services, trying to see if we can't get this changed, that we could have more guests. It will happen someday. We haven't given up yet.
All right. Bigger house on the way?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sandy, for sharing your
You're
perspective.
welcome. You're welcome.
We'll be back in a moment with Megan Spearing, who will tell us some of the criteria that you have to meet and about the differences between palliative care and hospice care. We'll be right back. We're back. It's important for older adults to let their families know their plans and their caregivers what their end-of-life preferences are. Megan Spearing is a nurse practitioner with Freeman Health System, and she joins us now to talk about being on the palliative care team. Megan, thank you for being here and all your work with Solace House of the Ozarks.
Thank you for inviting us.
So tell us, what is palliative care and what is hospice care, how they might be the same and how they might be different?
So palliative care is a continuum. Hospice is part of it, but not the entirety. So palliative care can actually be used for people with a serious illness at any point during their illness. At the beginning, our interventions may be going over who you want to be your medical decision maker if you're not able to communicate with us, or advanced medical directives, education about what to expect during this process. But especially with our diseases that are chronic and progressive in nature, the further along we get down that course, we may have to resort more towards symptom management versus disease modification. When we get to the final stages of an illness, that's when hospice comes into play.
Right.
So hospice, you have to have 2 criteria. One, you have to have a prognosis of 6 months or less. And then the second criteria is you have to forego any other curative treatment.
So talk to me about making those decisions of what to do next when you're at the hospital with a family. What goes into that discussion? And yeah, I'm sure that's probably difficult for you, but you know how to have these conversations with families. What do they need to weigh in this decision making and, choosing Solace House or at home?
So before we get to our options of care, we spend a lot of times with family members and the patients to figure out how life has been, what's been going well, what have the struggles been. We check to see if there's any education gaps of the disease process or what's been going in the hospital stay, just to make sure everyone is on the same page. And we elicit their values and preferences to make sure our medical staff is on the same page as the patient and their family members. And once we have that basis to work off, then we start talking about our different options of care. For some people, the hospital stays are no longer effective, no longer helping people feel better or do better. And when we get to that point, we start talking about comfort care or hospice care. And for a select few, Solace House may be the best fit.
I mean, some people would like to die at home, but it may not work for them and their families. How does a family gauge that? And then are there certain qualifications, or do you make a referral to get them to the Solace House of the Ozarks?
So a lot of people, we know through studies, they want to pass away at home. Unfortunately, not everyone can have that opportunity, especially when there are social barriers, whether maybe their spouse is elderly and cannot physically do the work that goes with caring for someone. The adult children live out of state and they can't take time off of work to come home. There are a lot of things that make it not possible. So Solace House was created to help fill that need. So for people who would normally be in a home environment but don't have that social dynamic to make it possible, we've created this home filled with volunteers to step in as surrogate family members. So when a person is at Solace House, they are surrounded by a team of volunteers to help make it possible to be in a home environment at end of life.
Are there certain medical conditions that just don't allow for this and others that do?
We do have some criteria when we look at Solace House to make this be able to benefit as many people as possible. We do limit the prognosis to 30 days or less. So someone generally needs to be in their last days to weeks of life. We also look at the medical care needed because we have volunteers. We don't have trained medical staff. So if there's extensive wound care or tube feeds or other medical equipment required, unfortunately we aren't able to take people
It needs
into
to be
the
a
home.
medical facility, a higher
Yes.
level of care.
Yes.
So you've been involved in this for a long time. Why was it important to you to get involved in Solace House?
Well, I have a family member today, and numerous family members in the past, but we are looking at a person's last probably weeks of life at this point. He has Medicare, and what a lot of people don't understand, Medicare does not cover caregiver needs.
Wow.
So Medicare will pay for a facility if the goal is for skilled therapy, but if the need is for people to have a caregiver, Medicare does not cover it. The cost of the facility at that point is out of pocket, ranging between $4,000 and $5,000 a month.
Wow.
The daughter was telling me, my mom has some money saved up, but I'm really worried about what that would do for her. And there has to be a better option than saying we're going to bankrupt the surviving spouse to pay for this person's care in their final weeks of life.
Right. So when it comes to how this was all established, you work with hospice agencies. What is that relationship like?
So everyone who goes to Solace House has a hospice agency managing their care because we just supply the home and the volunteers. So the hospice team manages the care, they decide the medical treatment, and the volunteers, along with the family members, implement that treatment. So the hospice team is very involved with Solace House. They come and do visits just like they would at home. The volunteers can call the hospice team whenever they have questions about the plan of care or let them know this is a change in the patient's condition. What do we do from here?
So is there ever a time where somebody might start having, in maybe a nursing home or in a different facility, or go home and then they decide, hey, we can't handle this at home, we need your help?
Luckily, every hospice team has a social worker and an RN case manager. So if they do want to try being at home, which is a good idea, but they find that it's just not feasible, they can connect with their case manager, work with a hospice team social worker, and make a transfer over to Solace House by using the referral process.
You've talked about, she mentioned that you've done some investigating. There is a need possibly for more space. Do you see that happening daily or weekly that, hey, we need more Solace House of the Ozarks?
Yes, yes. We often have a waiting list at Solace House, and as people become more aware of Solace's house services, then I anticipate that waiting list is probably going to be longer.
What would you say to folks to try and get them involved in what Solace House does?
I would say absolutely be involved. There are many capacities that Mona will talk about for our volunteers, from groundkeeping to direct patient services to food to monetary, because we don't charge anyone for these services. We don't ask people to pay for the care they're receiving. So it's run off of donations.
So as a family, what would be some of the things that would make them think this would be an option for them? What are some of the challenges at home that they might say, oh, okay, we really should consider this?
When I talk to families about the possibility of going home, I let them know that I always recommend two people being there to help care for them, especially if we're at a point where we need to roll a patient for personal care, items like that. And one person can't be the person 24/7.
There are strains on caregivers, and you don't want those family members to feel guilty because they're not caring for them, but they might need help.
Yeah, and especially through our recent pandemic, we've had family members with multiple losses, and that emotional grief tends to multiply on itself. So when we've gone through a previous loss and dealing with another loss, you end up going through that first loss just as fresh as that second loss. So having someone come alongside you, like our volunteers, can help with that healing process and help them be able to navigate through their grief.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Megan, for sharing all this information with us.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll talk to the volunteer of Family Support Services and the coordinator of volunteers at Solace House of the Ozarks. We're back. Solace House of the Ozark operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and handling that staffing of volunteers is done by Mona Elston, and she joins us now for our conversation. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you are kind of the lone employee of
Yes.
Solace House of the Ozarks. Everyone else is a volunteer, correct?
That's correct.
So tell me a little bit about your job and what you do.
Yeah, so I oversee the day-to-day operations of the house. So I'm making sure that we've got groceries stocked. I'm making sure that the phones are getting answered, the doors unlocked, basic things, but I'm also processing referrals. I'm main point of contact with families that come in through the door, and then I'm also making sure that volunteers are staffed in here.
So you talked about a referral. How often do you get referrals?
We get referrals all the time, daily. Sometimes,
Daily.
you know, it's ebbs and flows, I would say. We're pretty new still in the community, so we, have waiting lists sometimes, and other times we don't. But I feel like the traction is coming, and we have more wait lists than
Ever
nothing.
before?
Yeah.
So some people might assume this is end-of-life care, that you might have to have medical training, but that's not true. You don't have to have medical training?
That is not true, and that is scary for some people, but I always tell our volunteers, if you've been around an infant, you can do this. Like, it's so scary to a lot of people, but it's really, really simple. And really what we're there for is just supporting the families. And so you can do this if you have some medical background, but you can do this with none. We help you every step of the way become confident in our caregiving.
And are there other tasks that folks can do besides
Yes.
the one-to-one care?
Yes, absolutely. We have volunteers who come work on the house. We have volunteers who bring casseroles that we keep in the freezer to feed our families that come. We have people who are interested in house cleaning and will come dust for us. I hate dusting, so it's great to have somebody to do that for us. So there's just a myriad of opportunities with Solace House, and it really is for the community, by the community. We want everybody to be involved in every aspect of what we're doing.
And this really could impact any family. It could be your family that needs this resource.
Absolutely. Death is the one thing that is certain. And you don't know what you have in Solace House until you need it, unfortunately. And so it's a really, really great thing for our community.
What's the reaction when, you see folks who volunteer, you see families who are there. What's the reaction you get from the families and even from volunteers who might realize, what they get out of volunteering at a place like this?
I think just gratitude and unity. It's such a gift, and I see it on the faces of all of our family members that come through here. They feel, some of them speechless. They don't know what to say. Everything has been so hard up until coming to Solace House, and I hear time and again, this was the easiest thing that we did. And that's the goal. The burden that you carry at the end of life is so heavy. And so we're able to offer some relief from that. So, and then for our volunteers, they get to give back. And it's really neat to see how everybody kind of connects at Solace House. It does not matter if you grew up here or not. Everybody knows somebody. Everyone's got a connection. And so it's really amazing to see our volunteers get to give back, and they recognize something in the families that they're serving, whether that's common interests, lifelong friends. There's always a connection there and an opportunity to be unified in this moment.
So what are some steps to becoming a volunteer? What does someone need to do?
Yeah, the best way is to go online. We have a application form there, and that goes straight to me, and then I give you a call, and you come in. I give you a tour and try not to scare you away with all of the things, but we do a background check. All of our volunteers submit to a background check, and then we do some on-the-job training, so they'll shadow and kind of see how things are done, and we go from there.
So is it a hard job to be around grieving and others experiencing grief? Can it be?
I think it takes a special type of person to do what we do. I don't feel like it's difficult, but I've learned that that's because I'm made to do it. Mm-hmm. There are so many that this is not their gifting, this isn't their skill set, and that's why we're needed, because it's not for everybody. But I believe firmly that everyone can find a way to connect to this mission of Solace House.
You bet. And there are jobs that can be not necessarily that one-on-one where you have to talk to someone and you might not know what to say.
Right.
They can give in other ways.
That's right.
So what is the website that folks should reach out?
www.solacehouseoftheozarks.com.
All right, www.solacehouseoftheozarks.com.
You got it.
So what do you see as the biggest benefit of the house? I mean, you've had gatherings there.
The biggest benefit is we get an opportunity to rewrite end of life and what that means for people. So many times we could probably all think back to a loss that we experienced that we didn't get to say goodbye in the way that we wanted to. It happened too quickly. It was too chaotic. I had to focus on X, Y, and Z, and I didn't get to say my goodbyes. We get to push pause at this really pivotal moment in the family's life and give them an opportunity to say goodbye the way that they want to.
Take away all those other stressors
That's right.
that might be pulling them away from this moment in time.
It's
that they
massive.
Really need.
It pushes the grieving process forward. It invites the healing process in. It's so pivotal.
And they get to share moments together.
Absolutely.
When it's really important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mona Elston, hopefully get some more volunteers. Thank you for joining us and explaining more about Solace House of the Ozarks.
Thank you for having me.
Finally, it is important and possible to plan now for end-of-life decisions. No matter what your age is now, an advance directive will put your wishes in writing. Now, the National Institute of Aging offers an online interactive program at prepareforyourcare.org. That's prepareforyourcare.org. That's our edition of Newsmakers. Thanks for watching. I'm Lisa Aligas.